This is After Ian. Regardless of sea rise, flooding, and storm surge, people are still drawn to live and thrive near the water. But at what cost? Investigative reporter Eileen Kelley talked with some of the folks living on the barrier islands.
Barrier islands are nature's versions of dikes or natural flood barriers. That's why they're called barrier islands. People have been living on them for centuries. Near back-to-back hurricanes in the 1920s, and the massive killer Hurricane Donna did not deter people like Stan Stouter. His family's been coming to Fort Myers Beach since the 1950s.
My parents would come, and every winter they would be here, and every year of my life I spent at least 2 weeks on Fort Myers Beach.
The resiliency of Barrier Island people has been tested once again after Hurricane Ian. The island's old businesses and bungalows took the brunt of the storm. Of some 12,000 single-family homes on Lee County's barrier islands, more than half sustained significant damage, and about a third of those homes have been deemed uninhabitable, and that's just single-family homes. According to records from the Lee County Property Appraiser's Office, 1/3 of the island's 11,500 condominiums have also been deemed uninhabitable.
I don't think I could rebuild on the single story and live here. We were talking about PTSD. I really don't even think I could sleep here on the first story after what happened, because I might have bad dreams of water.
Homes, like Carrie Lee's on Fort Myers Beach, where she lived with her 4-year-old son, cannot be repaired. She must tear it down.
I just keep trying to think of the future. I'm thinking hopefully 5 years from now, we're here living on the island and the school's finished and he's going there, and this is just a distant memory.
On September 28th, Lee and her son were home when the canal behind her house began to flood.
And then ran out and looked out the front here, and it was coming down the street.
Lee grabbed her son and headed out to a neighboring home on pilings 15 feet above the ground.
I mean, when I was there for like maybe 30 minutes, the water was already halfway up my home, and there were boats. There were huge boats coming down the street and running into our neighbors' homes. And then finally the water was like to the top of the house. And then that's when I forgot about my home and started focusing on my neighbor's house, because the water was coming into their home. Suddenly just having this feeling in their home that we were no longer in a home anymore, that we were like on a raft in the middle of the ocean.
Though the islands have been gentrifying over the years, Fort Myers Beach, Pine Island, Sanibel, and Captiva have largely held on to the last vestiges of old Florida. Much of that is now gone, carted off to sea like Burt's Bar and Matlacha. Bernard Johnson came down here in the 1970s. Among other businesses, he owned Burt's Bar, a staple in the old fishing village for decades. It was a community bar where locals were old friends and tourists became new friends.
Never even crossed my mind that it would be gone. When you think about it, it was built back in the 30s, and it has gone from there to almost, 80 years, and it survived storms that probably weren't even recorded. The water would come up, and then the water would go down, and that was it. But nothing like this.
A little piece of paradise is what drew Stouter, Lee, Johnson, and Dan Allers, who is now the mayor of Fort Myers Beach, to Southwest Florida's Barrier Islands.
I think that's the culture of Fort Myers Beach. I think that culture will be back. As long as I have a vote, I'm going to try to keep the culture as close as what brought me here. And I think there's a lot of people that share that same mentality. They like the mom and pop shops. They like the quirkiness. They like the eclectic nature of the island. And I think as long as we can keep that, it doesn't matter what the buildings look like.
But so much of what visitors and residents like Doug Ekman hold dear is not likely to come back.
We like the maritime feel with the shrimp boats and the combination of the beachfront community and the maritime vibe.
Ekman and his wife had a 1959-era home on Fort Myers Beach. The home is now gone. He is now mapping out plans on how to rebuild. But with the cost to rebuild to hurricane code hovering around $600 a square foot, he's aware that some of his old neighbors will not be able to rebuild.
They can't afford to build back a new house to replace the house they used to have, because I'm hearing some pretty high numbers. And I've already thought about what I'd rebuild if I can afford it, or find a contractor to build it. You know, my first floor is going to have to be 12 feet above grade.
He serves on the local planning authority, which is similar to a zoning board.
We understand the town's not going to get built back like it was, but we do want to try to retain a unique character for Fort Myers Beach. But it's going to be a challenge to balance the economics of redevelopment in a coastal community, which is very expensive, with maintaining a sort of a more, let's say, rustic feel or a maritime feel that we used to have that was charming.
Another deterrent is the cost of insurance. Wind insurance is not required for those without mortgages. So it stands to reason that many of those homeowners, especially those with homes built before Hurricane Donna or shortly after, may have been uninsured or underinsured. Shelton Weeks, a professor at Florida Gulf Coast University, is an expert in real estate.
So if they had them insured, and you know, especially if they were older structures, odds are that there's no way that they will have enough in terms of proceeds from the insurance payments to rebuild to current code. Because when you consider building back to current code, base flood elevation plus 1 foot of freeboard, you're going up, so cost of construction is going to be higher.
What has held its value and has actually shot up is the price of land on the islands, which again will not deter those determined to live and thrive near the water.
I think what we're seeing there is an influx of significant capital. I think there are a lot of institutional investors that are looking at our market and people that are willing to come down here and buy properties that have been damaged or destroyed and then build newer things to code. There are going to be more high-end restaurants and hotels and things like that that come to our market because those are the ones that will be able to afford the higher construction costs, the higher land cost, and the higher cost of operation associated with higher taxes and higher property casualty insurance and flood insurance.
So, will we be saying goodbye to old Florida and the things that drew so many of us down here to begin with?
A little piece of it disappear probably with every storm.
There are many more stories and more of holding our community leaders accountable as we rebuild after Hurricane Ian.
Please stay with WGCU as we continue to gather the news and present it at WGCU.org, on WGCU FM, and right here on WGCU PBS.
We want to say thank you to all for helping us tell the stories of Hurricane Ian.